The life in Cancun, it's pretty. I think it's kind of interesting how again there are people that are just come from everywhere, and they're usually normal houses. I mean, as missionaries, we stayed in these houses, just houses and or apartments. So just kind of like normal city lifestyle. I mean, everything's just kind of like a city life there. And I mean, interestingly enough, but there's also those kind of things where you do want to watch out because Cancun is kind of known for its dangers with some gangs or things that. And I mean, I haven't confronted with any of those gangs. I really haven't had any trouble with them. But I mean, it happens. So Cancun's just kind of that city there. You have to be a little careful, and it kind of depends on the part because the first part of Cancun I was in was just kind of a moderate part. I mean, there are some people that are wealthy and some that didn't have very much money, but most of the people were just in the middle in that part. And then when I went to my second area, that's where most of the wealthy people were, which actually had more, which was interesting because in that part there was more American influence. I even had two Walmarts pretty close to the house. I had a few McDonald's and just any other American restaurant you could find pretty close to my second area. And even my first area too had a few things that were Americanized because overall the city of Cancun, it's getting more Americanized. That's the kind of the difference how Cancun and Merida, Cancun's a lot more Americanized just because of the high tourism there. So, I mean, I guess it was kind of like living at home, but just with a lot of heat, I guess. But in the city life there in Cancun, I mean, most people they live pretty close together, and I mean, you just see the people from all over the place. Not really any close families live by each other. They may live in the city, but more kind of spread out. So that's how it was in Cancun. I mean, that's one of the cities I served in. I only served in one other city, and that's actually on the Merida side of the mission, which is called Campeche. And that city, it's a little bit smaller. It's probably half the size of Cancun, but I mean, it still has a fair amount of things, and it kind of has a life. I mean, the difference is Cancun. There are actually two differences I want to touch. Cancun's a flat level place, and then Campeche is places where there's just hills everywhere. And just walking up those hills, I mean, it's just it gets tiring. But at the same time, after that, you just have a good day and you do get a good workout. But that's one thing that I just kind of see different. And another thing is probably the food. In Campeche, I mean, it's not like everything in Cancun we eat there is the same as in Campeche. And Merida, not even that either. Because Campeche, I found it to eat a lot more seafood type. I actually ate octopus, squid, a lot of fish, and I mean, the good news is I love seafood, and if you love seafood, I mean, Campeche would just be kind of more of like a paradise to you. And even there, I mean, it's a pretty place because both Cancun and Chetumal, sorry, both Cancun and Campeche have coastline, so you can actually see the ocean. More in Campeche because you're on a hill, but there's a part in Cancun where you can see some water too, and the only difference is the water in Cancun it's nicer, it's more clear and bluer, so. But that's how it is, and I mean the city life. Otherwise, it's pretty similar. However, I mean about half, maybe a little more than half of my mission were in more of towns or smaller cities. And I mean, the smaller cities, they have a few less things, but they have enough to have like a supermarket and things like that. But in those smaller cities, that's where I find myself where there's more families together. And the wards I served in, for example, you can maybe see half of your wards with the same last name. So I mean, it's more family based in these towns, and they know each other more. I mean, I guess it's just kind of like any town really, but that's how it is there. And also the towns there use a lot. They will use more Mayan. I mean, they speak Spanish too, because these are still cities and they still, I mean, have what they need. And their official language is Spanish. But yes, they do have people that also speak Mayan, and it's just kind of cool. I actually really love serving those towns just because that's the opportunity you have to start speaking Mayan. Or Also, try more things, try new foods. And I mean, my mission actually run with 3 different states, and it's kind of interesting because each state kind of has its different things, especially with the towns. I mean, there's maybe one state where the small cities and the towns I was in were, I mean, really heavy with the Mayan influential and the food as well, the Mayan food, and just kind of that style. But then I was in one other part of the town where, in another state, how it's more, how the people there are not as reserved, but they're kind of more like city type people, just because, I mean, it's close to Cancun, and I mean, these kind of towns on that side of the part do have more they're a little more industrialized. So it's just kind of interesting how wherever you go, it just kind of depends, because I've been to, I mean, Cancun is a city of about 700,000 people. And then you got Campeche, which is about 300,000. And then I went to 2 other smaller cities. I mean, one you may have heard, it's Tisimi, and the other is Tikul. And you're going to get about 50,000 there. And then I went to even smaller towns, but these were kind of more the industrialist towns. And I mean, it only hit maybe 10,000 people. But all these places I've been to, I mean, they just are wonderful, and I just enjoyed being in each of these places and just learning a lot from them. So yeah.